lower back pain, depression, high blood pressure, inflammation, autoimmune diseases, things like that. But I will guarantee you do not know these. Now, I'm going to break this up in two sections. The first part of this video is for the person who wants just bare bones information. They don't want anything too technical. And then the second part of the video, I'll go into those people who want the science behind it, the mechanism behind these symptoms, and like the underlying reason why they develop in the first place. You have about 25,000 genes in your body, and 10% of those genes are greatly influenced by vitamin D. Not to mention, when you get your blood tests with vitamin D, they're only showing you the inactive vitamin D. They're not showing you what's happening in the cells. And so the blood levels of vitamin D do not correlate very well with the vitamin D that are in your cells. It's an active suppression of anything positive about vitamin D in the news, in medical research, because it directly competes with the top-selling drugs.
I got up and presented this data to, these were the top vitamin D researchers in the world, all assembled there. It was vicious, the attacks of how vitamin D doesn't do this. How could you say this? I said, I'm just presenting the data that we have assembled. You're walking on guys' careers that have spent their whole career doing this stuff. They never conceived that this could be true.
So let's dive in. Okay, number one, head sweating. Now, typically you'll see this in infants, but you can also see it in teenagers, adults. But if you notice like a child or yourself sweating just more in the head, suspect a vitamin D deficiency. Number two, sweating more at night, even if your temperature is cool. Now, this can also show up with your pillow being moist in the morning. So excess sweating, especially at night, is a vitamin D deficiency. Number three, mood swings. A person going from a condition or emotion of happiness down to feeling irritable, down to angry, and then they get sad, because vitamin D controls the regulation of your mood and it heavily influences emotions. And this has a lot to do with how vitamin D affects your brain. But if you notice that yourself or a loved one is just like roller coastering with these emotions, it could be a vitamin D deficiency. Number four, procrastination, being backlogged, and you just don't feel productive. I mean, it's pretty wild that someone's motivation is connected to a vitamin D deficiency. All right, number five, panic attacks. Now, in other videos, I talk about panic attacks being a vitamin B1 deficiency, and it can be, but you also have a vitamin D connection to this as well. A panic attack is a very severe fear or a very high anxiety condition. And it definitely relates to certain hormones and neurotransmitters like serotonin. But for those people out there that have panic attacks, resort to drugs, they might want to consider trying high doses of vitamin D3. I've done videos on certain breathing techniques that a person can do as well, like breathing through your nose. And I will put that link down below, but don't forget vitamin D. Number six, achiness in your pelvis, in your lower back, in your hips, and your upper legs. Vitamin D is intimately connected with the formation of bone. And one symptom of that is literally pain, but not sharp pain, this achiness that's the inside of the bone, because that's where you're losing the bone, on the inside. It's sad because it's so easy to fix, but you would have to take higher amounts, not lower amounts. I'm talking like 10,000, 20,000 at least. If you have any concern about 20,000 IUs of vitamin D3 being toxic, I just want to let you know that being out in the sun in the summer for 40 minutes will give you 20,000 IUs of vitamin D3. Is that toxic? No. 200,000 IUs of vitamin D3 taken over months. That's when you get into the toxic effect, not 20,000 IUs. So then we have number seven, which is loss of muscle strength. Vitamin D has a direct effect on calcium itself. And without vitamin D, calcium is going to be deficient in the muscle. Calcium allows the muscle to contract, but not only contraction, it's also involved in the production of muscle itself. So without vitamin D and calcium, you cannot create muscles. And we also get this weakness within muscles that control power and strength, primarily your legs and your shoulders. And on top of that, vitamin D also controls and regulates pain. Number eight, stiffness. And the stiffness usually occurs in the knees and in the fingers. And of course, this definitely relates to inflammation, but it also has to do with what vitamin D does to your cartilage and your collagen. So you might find that when you stretch backwards and create tension on the cartilage in your breastbone, you might feel stiffness in that area as well. And that can also affect breathing, things like that. Number nine, chronic fatigue. This has a lot to do with those little energy factories in your cell, they're called mitochondria, and how important vitamin D is to support that little factory. And if you don't have enough vitamin D, you just can't make energy. Number 10, your ability to think quickly is diminished. Basically, you have too many applications open on your desktop computer, but related to your brain. And number 11, it's just very difficult to be satisfied when you eat a meal. It could be that the food is just nutritionally empty and you keep eating to get these nutrients. It can also be certain things in the food that cause you to be addicted. But if you're low in vitamin D, you're just not going to feel satisfied. You will definitely have a tendency to overeat. So now that you know the general information, let me just kind of give you another layer of this data on each point, which is actually very interesting. Okay, number 1 was head sweating. There's something different about the head versus the rest of the body as far as certain sweat glands. We have a lot more sweat glands in our head than other parts of our body. It affects the autonomic nervous system, causing this excess sweating in the head. Now, this also relates to number 2 when we talked about night sweats, but there's something else going on with night sweats. Vitamin D suppresses an overactive immune system. And just think about the immune system of all the things that happen. One would be like a fever, right? That's a normal response. And so when you're deficient in vitamin D and you have a slightly overreactive immune system, this whole mechanism of sweating is controlled by this little tiny computer chip in your brain called the hypothalamus. And when you have a vitamin D deficiency in this overreactive immune system, it's going to trigger excess sweating to compensate for this immune imbalance situation. And one aspect of this is a fever. Your body is generating more heat, and with that comes more sweat to compensate, all coming from a vitamin D deficiency. All right, number 3 is a mood swing, okay? Now, when we kind of come up and down on this emotional roller coaster, you have your adrenals involved. Now, the adrenal gland, starting with the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal, is on this HPA axis, this circuit thing going on. But when you're vitamin D deficient, cortisol is going to go up. Now, I don't know if this is just because it's trying to help you get rid of inflammation. I don't know about that. But with a vitamin D deficiency, you're going to have a dysregulation of this cortisol pattern. And if you have too much cortisol, it's going to put you more in a different emotional state. Let's go to number 4, which is low motivation to do. In the brain, there is this little center. It's a tiny little nerve bundle. It's quite fascinating. It's called the nucleus accumbens. And this is the heart of a lot of things, including addictions. It kind of runs on dopamine. And yes, dopamine is involved in addictions, but it's also a neurotransmitter that's involved with motivation, reward, doing things, getting things done, that type of thing. All right, number 5, panic attacks, a high level anxiety, a very strong fear. Panic attacks from a physical standpoint in the body are related to that structure I talked about in the brain called the amygdala. That's more like an adrenal in the brain. It's kind of like it regulates fear. That needs vitamin D. We have several things going on. We have serotonin, which is kind of like a happy hormone. And so vitamin D is necessary to balance these two things. All right, number 6, achiness in the pelvis area and the lower back and the upper thigh muscle. Now, this relates to a condition called osteomalacia. Now, what is osteomalacia? That's a severe vitamin D deficiency that's affecting the calcium in the bone. Now, think about this. Vitamin D deficiency is the number 1 cause of osteomalacia. This is basically where the bones become very soft. I think this is going on in a massive scale in society right now, but they have a subclinical version of osteomalacia. I think I had it in high school because I was eating poorly, and I know I had a vitamin D deficiency, and I started getting fractures. But the bones are soft, certain proteins that are just not developing as well. You have to realize that vitamin D, controls calcium absorption by 20 times in the small intestine. And in other videos, I talk about the 2 systems of vitamin D. You have the one that controls calcium and the other system that is non-calcium. Yes, you can check the vitamin D in the blood. If you tested that, chances are that's going to be pretty low. It's probably going to be 30 or less, in which case you just need to start taking vitamin D3. And I would take a lot of it. I would take at least 10,000 to 20,000 IUs per day until you can get your levels a little bit higher. For this bone problem, you could probably get away with taking it sporadically, like once a week if you want to do that, but I wouldn't do that if you had the problem. So that's number 6. Let's go to number 7, loss of muscle strength. Why? Because vitamin D controls calcium. And calcium controls the contraction of the muscle. If you're missing calcium because you don't have enough vitamin D and you can't contract, what's going to happen with that muscle? Pain that's kind of all over. It's hard to pinpoint. It's just achy. All right, number 8 is stiffness, mainly in the knees and the finger joints because the cartilage needs vitamin D and it's not getting vitamin D, so it's going to be more inflamed. In the weight-bearing joints on your knees, could be the hips as well, but also if you use the computer a lot or your fingers, you're going to notice it in the fingers. This can definitely lead to osteoarthritis. This is a lack of vitamin D. Vitamin D is essential for maintaining this cartilage and maintaining the ligaments and the tendons. And think about this, your ribs attached to the sternum with cartilage. So you're going to notice it right through here too. And so this is why stretching is so important to really keep this rib cage opened up, because it'll tend to be contracted, inflamed, and pull you forward